What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Best News Broadcast podcast, and also 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And also once a month, I host the only online broadcast in the world for dads and fathers that is sponsored by Dove Men Care. It's also co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. As always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. We're broadcasting live on February 23rd. February's coming to the end, but we're going to make it count. And in many places, or at least in North America, it's Black History Month. And one of the areas that is of always concern when it comes to Blacks is the school to prison pipeline. And we have a returning friend here who's going to really delve down deeper into the whole school to prison pipeline issue. His name is Dr. Paul Miller. He's principal and CEO of Green Tech High Charter School, a highly successful school for boys in Albany, New York. He's an expert in urban education. He's specialized in school reform and redesign for over 20 years, counseling school officials and administrators on effective strategies to increase the performance amongst Black males and establish a culture of success. He has committed his life to educating and empowering low-income urban youth with the intention to facilitate change and undo the trend of academic underachievement that often plagues young Black men from the inner city. The passion did not begin with his professional career, but was implanted in him as a youth growing up in the projects of Rochester, New York. Similar to many of his students, Dr. Miller understands the challenges that often knock young minority men off course and hinder their ability to reach their full potential. However, he teaches students not to be victims, but to use adversity as a fuel to succeed and rise above their circumstances. We are blessed and highly favored to have Dr. Miller here tonight. He's going to be sharing about a recent article called The School to Prison Pipeline. So let us welcome for the first time, but not the last time, Dr. Paul Miller. How are you?
I'm doing well, Dr. Vibe. How you doing tonight, man?
Blessed and favored. Great to see you again. It's been a minute.
Yes, sir. Good to see you as well.
But you're doing fine, and it's good seeing you as always. What's been going on in the beginning of this year for you?
Hey, man, just busy. We've been working towards keeping kids educated during this pandemic. You know, that's been the big thing as far as not having students lose or create these educational gaps and making sure that they still get what they need. And it's been a blessing. We've been doing really well. We're actually outperforming other schools in the state by about 150%.
Wow.
So it's a blessing, brother, that we're putting in the work. Got a great team of people who are doing what they got to do on a daily basis for our kids. That I just finished my third book, which is still got to go through the editing process and some other things, but that'll be coming out hopefully within this 2021 year as it goes through the publication process. So just been busy, man, working and working always to get better.
Excellent to hear. You shed some interesting light here because many of the reports I hear about education, especially education of our young people, it's a challenge, it's an uphill road. What is making your experience with your young people different?
Well, what's different is that able to build systems that work. So we build systems that work, and then we implement them to fidelity. And they're based off of research, they're based off of practice, and a lot of it is just common sense. But quite honestly, what's worked the most for us is that we're able to align virtual school, and we've tried to make it almost as consistent as possible with regular school. So virtual school is completely virtual right now, but what we're able to do is, again, with building a consistent system, it looks like regular school. So kids go to 8 periods a day. They have a lunch break in between. They have a system that they're utilizing for their curriculum, but they have teachers who are actually teaching in school. So the teachers are coming to work and students are at home. The teachers are teaching from their classrooms. There's an expectation and a criteria for students that they have to follow as well. There's a consistent curriculum across the board. There's social emotional help that's built in. And as an administrative team and as the leaders in the building, our goal is to push and model the way. And it really is just the whole system that actually works. And like I said, right now, analyze the data. I believe that we have almost 80% of our kids passing, where the average right now in the state, I think, is about 30%, 33% is passing during this pandemic. And again, it's that the systems work.
Okay, so let me interject here. Systems now, is it your systems are working? Why? Because is there money for these systems compared to other schools? Is it what from where you're looking from your lens? Where are the gaps with the 30%?
I got 2/3 of the funding that other people get, so it has nothing to do with money. It has to do with planning, preparation. It has to do with creativity. It has to do with consistency. It has to do with accountability and follow up. And again, we have systems in our daily school. So our daily school is built off of building relationships. It's built off of how we deliver teaching and learning. It's built off of how we use data to inform instructional decisions. And then it's built off how do we hold everybody accountable. So there's items that we do every day based off of those 4 pillars. And on those 4 pillars, we transition those over to virtual learning, and we tweak them to make sure that they're fit for virtual learning. Another article that I wrote that people can go out to my blog at urbaneducation.com, and it's on the five key points for virtual learning. And I break it down based off of everything that people might want to know about virtual learning. And we take these systems, and they're not necessarily, actually, we're probably spending the least amount of money that we've spent in a school year currently. Like currently, we're saving a ton of money because the kids aren't in school, but we are still providing them a quality education where they're able to get everything that they need. And it just really comes down to, I can't say it more, consistency. And where the gaps are coming from is that, well, we had to eliminate obviously the technology gaps that were there. So we did have to spend money up front. So we did provide Chromebooks to every student. We just reallocated the budget appropriately based on COVID. And there was also some grants and some other funding that we were able to help do that with. But again, we provided technology for every student. And then after we provided the technology for every student, we also, if they needed a hotspot, we also provided that. So we had to level the playing field because many students don't have access and equitability to those devices. And so we had to do that and create this even playing field. So now that it's even and every student has either access to internet or a device, now we have to make sure that we educate them consistently and fairly across the board. And I think what's happening is that there's a lot of schools and a lot of places that aren't willing to take on certain fights. So I'll give you an example. Our students we have a code of conduct that we utilize in person. So when a student walks in our door, they have to follow this code of conduct. There's a same code of conduct for virtual. And we're not going to make excuses for students and assume that they can't do it because they're home and there's other things going on. Now, will we help them? Will we go the extra mile? Every Friday, we do home visits. I've done over 150 home visits myself as the CEO and principal since the beginning of the school year. So it's not about not supporting them, but there's expectations that they're going to have to meet, and they're going to have to rise up to these expectations. So yes, they have to have their camera on. Yes, they have to be on time. Yes, they have to dress appropriately. Yes, they have to do all of these things. And if they don't, we're following up. So when they're doing the right thing, we follow up with positive. And there's interventions. I mean, our middle school kids are getting items and different donated toys that we have sent home as recognition or whatever there might be to recognize and award them. But when students aren't doing it, we have consequences as well. There's virtual detention that's put in place, and there's different steps that we follow. And the biggest piece is we have people following up on it to make sure that students do it and that their families follow up. And the communication with the families has to be bigger than ever. And end up trying to make sure that we do this comprehensive model that really makes sure that they're getting an education that they still need, and they're actually doing quite well based on our data.
Oh, so Christy White is saying here we need this in our communities, and she's a Indigenous children's author, so she's fully verifying and
Right.
agreeing with what you're saying. Now, because, and I don't want to spend too much on this, but I think it is related on our main subject tonight, the school to prison pipeline, because obviously we may have some heightened entrance into the prison pipeline because of the lack of funding or the lack of success during this period of time. What would you want to say, or what would you say best advice for parents who are feeling that the system is not serving their children well at this time, in the time of pandemic?
Wow, that's a loaded question.
Well, you're the loaded gun, man. So that's why you're the man tonight.
So no, it's all good. I appreciate it. So as far as that, because if the systems are not helping their children, so one is they got to put up the fight. So you can't roll over and play dead here and just allow it to happen to your kids and let it be okay. So you got to use your voice. But part of using their voice is also taking responsibility, and taking responsibility for what you can control as a parent. So you can, as a parent, if that child's in your household, they need to shut their devices off at a certain time and go to bed. They need to not be distracted. There needs to not be excuses. They need to be focused. And as them being in your household, there's some pieces that a parent might not be able or equipped to do, which is okay and understandable. But then as a parent, the accountability and responsibility has to be is advocate and get the help that your child needs, but not after the fact. It's being on top of it and pushing the school, making the school do their job. Now, is every school doing what they're supposed to be doing? No. Is every school following a system? And are there a lot of messes going on out here in this country? Absolutely. I'm sure maybe, I don't know if Canada is similar or not, but what I can tell you is that control what you can control as a parent. So control the factors and help your student to be the best student. You might not have a fancy table at home, but clear off a corner of something. Clear off a corner and give your child a space to work. Make it a priority and show your child that it's a priority. And yes, still fight with the powers that be to make sure it happens, but control the factors that you can control. And that's what goes on in your household.
And Christy White is saying, yes, absolutely. So let's turn the corner and get to what we were supposed to be chatting about tonight, but I think it's important, and I think both subjects are related. They're related with each other. They're feeding off each other. Yeah. Now let's talk about this article you wrote, The School to Prison Pipeline. Why write about it at this time?
Well, I have convened a team of writers. So I'm also, as I shared, I'm an author and a writer. I speak also, but my main goal is to get the message out there. And how do we create change for education and for systems and for equity? And so I've convened a team of writers who are very, very talented. And every month we have a different theme, and we're putting together pieces on a weekly basis. There's a rotational piece. And so the month that this piece was written in was about equity in education. And so understanding that one of the most inequitable pieces that there is the school to prison pipeline, it was something that needs to be written about. I mean, you know all the things that are going on in this country, and you report on it. You talk about it, and it's all over, and there's injustice for people that look like us, and for many others as well. But it just needs to be talked about. It needs to be shed the light, and something needs to be done, because what's happening is an injustice, and it also it connects back to the previous piece, because there's a lot of schools that aren't putting in the pieces that are needed. And so the educational gap is going to become larger. And as we know, if students don't graduate, their chances are going to be highly likely that they're going to end up dead or in jail. And so, especially for Black males. And so with this gap increasing, it's our responsibility as leaders and as educational leaders to make sure that we're providing the right type of education. And if you don't know, then you need to ask somebody. And that's the frustrating part of education, because a lot of times people won't ask other people for help. And it's like this big secret or taboo that you don't want to let people know that you don't know something. But if you don't know and you're failing your kids, shame on you. Like, that shouldn't happen. You're increasing this pipeline.
Christy White is saying, I am a mom of an Indigenous son who is in prison. So I'm sure she's gleaning to learn a lot from you in regards to this conversation piece. And I love how you started off using an analogy of two sprinters.
Right.
Can you give some background on that? Why did you come up? How did you come up, and why did you come up with that analogy to start the article with?
Well, you know, I saw a meme, and in this meme, you saw saw sprinter A and sprinter B, and sprinter A had a clear path. Like they had like the regular normal hurdles. So anyone who's trained, you can train to hop over these hurdles. And the hurdles, as you're running them, the more you practice, the better you get at hopping over these hurdles. And so any trained athlete who runs track, who does the hurdles as an event, becomes somewhat familiar with that. And then you had athlete B or sprinter B, who not only had hurdles, but there was all these other obstacles in their path. No matter how much they trained, there were other factors. So there's a barbed wire, there's alligator ponds, there's a higher hurdle, you're running with sandbags. And this is what it's like to be Black in America, or North America for the sake of your audience. And on top of being Black with that, now make that Black in trying to be educated. Because at the end of the day, this country has, especially in the United States here, has been founded on racism. There's been founded on slavery on the backs of Black people. And then what has happened and what has occurred throughout these years, yeah, there's been slavery, then we went to we go into Jim Crow, then we went to civil rights. And do you think, as I stated in the article, that after all of this oppression, that the master just said after the Brown versus Board of Education, yes, we're going to give them everything they deserve for the last 200 years? Hell no, that's not what was said. No one said, yeah, we're going to give them everything they need. The law says we have to provide this. We're going to provide this to the bare minimum, and we're going to look for ways to still make sure that our culture doesn't die, and our culture of oppression, our culture of, we can look at different instances in society that have created oppressive conditions. And that's what's happened with schools and education.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So and I love, another line I love from the article is that Black people are the sprinter B. And it always seems that, and I'm going to ask you this question, has the education system, in your opinion, not all of it, but been purposely keeping Black students, especially Black boys, back? And if you do believe that, what do you feel is the reasoning for that?
Well, I definitely I believe that there's some insights to how that has been true. Look at, we can start with redlining. Okay, so we look at redlining, and we look at not having the ability to buy houses in certain neighborhoods in certain areas, made it so poverty was concentrated. And what that did was put a bunch of people who look like you and I in certain neighborhoods and areas with no money and no ability to move forward, because the American dream is supposed to be to go to college, be able to come back and get a career and have a house with a picket fence and 2.5 kids and cars and all of those other things. But if you can't live that dream because you are stuck, or you're put in a place where you have to run with sandbags and you have to run through alligator ponds and some other things. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to make excuses, because as Black people, it's our job to not allow that and to find ways to get out of that and to fight through it. But is it happening? Yeah, it's still happening. So at the end of the day, when those things are happening, holding us back, the system wasn't designed for success. I mean, right now, if you look at it, they're by third and fourth grade, they're determining how many prisons need to be built by reading and math
Yeah,
scores.
that's
And
so true.
and so it was never designed, because if we fail, we help improve a capitalistic society. You know, jails are built, money is spent. You look at privatized prisons, you look at even public prisons and institutions, and the money that gets spent on those. And it's not all about that, but overall, the systems were just not built or designed to be successful and to educate us. You look at, with that funding and even the redlining, and I go back to that, you look at districts that are in impoverished neighborhoods, they don't receive the same type of tax money that a district in a wealthier neighborhood receives. And so they have less funding, they have less ability to be able to provide resources. And then the next step is, when they have those resources or they don't have them, they don't know what the hell to do with them. And so it's a complex problem.
Yeah, Christy is saying it's one failed system to another.
And they combine, and that's why, you know, what I feel that I'm passionate about, and what I want to empower other leaders, is how to build systems that work for kids, especially Black and brown kids, and be able to develop them and make sure that they're successful. And that's the goal. You know, if you look at it, I have over 90% of my boys are in poverty. I have 97% Black males, but we average a 95% graduation rate every year, 100% acceptance to college. And I say all that not to brag or to be, I say that humbly, but I say it to say it's about making sure that you're matching research, practice, and theory, and then you're going the extra mile to make sure that those items are put in place for kids and make sure that they work.
In regards to another thing you put out in this article, that 59%, only 59% of Black males graduate nationally in your country, and that's 21% less than white counterparts. When you hear that statistic, what does that make you say? How does that make you feel?
That makes me feel like we need to stop the politics and the political BS that adults do, and start making sure that kids are successful. Like, cut the crap. We're failing our young men. What we're doing is we're leaving 40% of our kids unprotected. We're leaving 41% of our kids out to the wolves to be able to increase their ability to go to jail or become dead. You know, and that's what's happening, is because as adults, the job isn't getting done to make sure they're successful. People aren't fighting and scrapping because not everyone cares, you know, and there's people who do care, and there's people who are fighting, but sometimes they're fighting against a machine, and they're fighting against the politics of a school district or the politics of a school board, whether it's public, charter, or any of those things. I don't care about that. What I care about is good schools. So how do we make schools better? And then take the time to admit also that if you're not doing it right, then ask for help. Let's get it. At the end of the day, failing shouldn't be an option for our kids.
This is bad. It's not a good situation. So how do you feel the pandemic has affected those numbers?
Oh, I think the pandemic is going to create it's going to do two things. So there's going to be larger gaps. So there's going to be larger gaps of kids who have learning deficiencies. And then there may be, in some cases, there may be some inflation of students who are being passed on because some of the standards have been reduced. And I know that there's some school districts that have just moved kids on. I have quite a few people who have complained, parents who have complained that their student was just moved on. And I believe one lady spoke to me and said that her child was in another district, and she had he just wasn't performing. There was no work. There was nothing getting done, but he moved on to the next grade. And I'm not saying this should be about holding kids back, but what it should be about is educating them properly and not just moving them on because the standards are going underneath the radar, because people are all, get a little bit of a pass because of of COVID. And that's going to create more of an issue. The issue is going to be that we got a bunch of people who are getting moved on who don't know what they're being moved on from, because they're not capable or able to, they don't understand, and the gaps and deficiencies are larger. But then there's also going to be people who are just falling apart. And the social emotional is a huge part of this, because this is tough for kids with the isolation and not being with their friends and not being able to be in the school. Sometimes school is the safest place that they have. And so it becomes a very, very difficult piece with this pandemic that is affecting kids. And again, as a school, that's why those 5 key components that I talked about, one of those being the social emotional pieces, has to happen. Like we mandate our kids, if they're failing classes, they have advisory meetings with their advisors that they have to attend, where they're discussing its goal setting and doing social emotional, check-ins and health and well-being. Those things have to happen if you want to make sure the kids are still successful during this time point.
Interesting. Christy White is saying Indigenous people in Canada are 6% of the whole population, with 30% to 50% percentage of the incarcerated men in education statistics. So even worse. So she completely gets it. She understands where you're coming from. Why are we having so many, or many, not so many Black men end up in prison? Why? Why do you think? Is it the home that's not succeeding? Is it the education system not succeeding? Where are the gaps?
Well, in my second book, We Need to Do Better, changing the mindset of children through community, through family, community, and education. I kind of talk about this. So, and again, it's called We Need to Do Better, and it's a mindset. So part of the mindset is that we were told, we were given a mindset from inception of being placed in this country, and it was beat, burned, and put into us and passed through our DNA. And we can go into what that looked like as far as that at some point in time if you'd like to. But with that mindset has developed, and that mentality has developed, and then it's perpetuated through poverty, it's perpetuated through racist systems, it's perpetuated through a lack of resources. And so it's about us reversing that curse. It's about us breaking that mindset. It's about, because we can talk about all of this, and you and I can have this conversation about schools, but if I'm going to be real, the majority of people who are listening are educational leaders. The likelihood of them going back and doing something different is probably slim to none. But as an individual, you have more opportunity and chance to change yourself and change your own mindset. So you have the ability to change your own mindset and reverse that curse, to change that learned helplessness and turn that in by forming new habits, rituals, and routines. Because the way you think is the way you act, and how you act is what you attract. So, again, turning those thoughts into things and turning them and reversing them by building new habits and routines and valuing education. So as a Black man, I'll give you an example. So quite often you see students with their pants sagging, right? And so when you see a student with his pants sagging, and I don't know if that's a Canadian thing or not.
It is too.
But you see a student with their pants sagging and you ask them where they come from. They said that comes from jail, right? That's what they say. But the education behind that is it's not from jail. That's not where it came from. That's a prison mindset that it came from. But where it originated from was the slave master did something called breaking the buck. The slave master would take the male slave and put him in the open or public, would pull his pants down, would sodomize him to show him that you're mine, and emasculate him. And as the man was emasculated, they would not allow them to pull their pants back up. They had to keep their pants down below their behind to show everybody else that they were still theirs. And so showing that was a mindset that was passed on. So now it was passed on to this prison culture. And for whatever reason, as Black folks, sometimes we like to take lemons and make lemonade. So whether it's the use of the N-word, which I would never, I still don't condone it as a term of endearment, but we turn it into a term of endearment. And so we take something that is supposed to be painful and turn it into something that should be a term of endearment. And so still doesn't make sense to me. But at the end of the day, that's what quite many of our people do. So they've taken something that was painful and turned it into something that may, for whatever reason, appear cool because they don't understand the history of it. And so it's about changing the mindset. It's about reversing those thought processes, about understanding your history of where you came from to know where you're going, and to understand that where you came from isn't where you really are from. So you need to reverse that and change those thought processes and know that you're so much more than that, and have that ability to change it. And see, I could, you done got me on my soapbox, brother. So
now go ahead, man. Roll, go for it.
But at the end of the day, it's about changing that mindset and giving a new, fresh frame. But as young men, quite often what happens is because this mindset is passed on, what I see too often is that our young Black men are not valuing education. They're not valuing, they're complacent. They're okay with some of the things that are happening. And, there's groups who aren't, and there's people who aren't, and we have some amazing young Black men as well. So I don't want to drop people into a pool, but there are too many of our young men who just aren't valuing and aren't caring. But it comes from, where is it coming from? It's coming from their parents. And not always, sometimes there's great parents too. So I don't want to generalize. But sure, often the apple does not fall far from the tree. So we have to look at this holistically, and we have to really take some responsibility to change the game.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree. I know that you're a strong proponent of many parents need to step up.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So, and are the numbers, based on your research, are the numbers of young Black men who are part of the prison, house from the prison pipeline, is that increasing or decreasing in America based on any research that you've done?
Last I've seen, it continues to increase, as I believe almost 2/3 of the prison population is Black. And I don't, the exact number slips my mind, but I know that it's about 2/3, and the numbers are just astronomical on the Black prison population. And it's just, and you think about mass incarceration. So that was another system that was put to hold us back. If you look at the 80s with the crack epidemic, and you look at the crack epidemic and the problems that it caused, and you look at the government, it's proven that the government had a huge part into dropping crack off into the neighborhoods to try to fund wars in Panama, Nicaragua, and all those other places, and down in Latin America. So they were funding wars with this drug money, and they dropped it into the communities. But why do you think they dropped it into the Black communities? And why did they have policies where for crack cocaine, you would get life sentences, but for cocaine, which is a rich white person's drug, you didn't get those same type of sentences. You would get slaps on the wrist. Why do you think those policies were put in place? And then as the drugs took hold and violence took hold, because the drugs put people out of their mind, and violence took hold because of the money, and there was all these other problems that were happening. What did the government do? They put mass incarceration policies in place, and everybody voted for it. And everybody put it in and said, yeah, now we got to be tough on crime, and not that, because now it's a scare tactic, because you see people getting killed and hurt, instead of now when you see a meth head, they're not being tough on meth heads. They're trying to put them in rehab. They're trying to help meth heads, because why? Meth is a white person's drug. And so at the end of the day, all these systems are stacked up against us, and they're piled up, and they're put piece after piece to make sure that we can't look successful. We can't be successful. And then, and then when we do, you got the white person saying, well, if he can do it, why can't you? Because maybe his bags happen to be a little bit lighter than my bag, and at the end of the day, we got to teach these brothers how to remove those bags.
where does that teaching start?
Oh, it starts at the household, man. It starts at home because it starts from teaching kids teaching kids as early as you can to read and write with speaking to them the way that you would want a child to be spoken to appropriately. From reading to them, making sure that they are equipped with all the tools and knowledge and skills. And some parents might say, I don't know, I don't have the school. Then find out. Stop making excuses. Like you gotta want that, but you gotta want that. So we need people to change their mindsets. And then after the house, every kid has to go through school. So that's the next place that's responsible. But then we got schools failing our kids too.
It's like a domino effect.
Yes, sir.
That's ridiculous. Really, it's just like it's frustrating. In your research,
yes, sir,
are there more prisons being built? Did you come across if there are more prisons being built in your country?
I haven't come across that piece, so I don't want to speak out of turn. But
Okay.
I know that from what I have seen is that it is consistent. I know that Biden just recently, one of his first acts in office was to do some things to defund some private prisons. But I think it was, and from my personal opinion, I think it was one of those things that he was doing for show. And again, I have no issues with Biden as of yet, but I think it was one of those political moves that says we just came from a situation that was so bad. Let me do something that puts down a good front. And some of the research that I saw is what he actually did was a very, very small percentage of prisons. I think it was like 9% it affected. So it wasn't something that was going to affect the larger amount of prisons. And so when you think about that, what was really the point of the purpose? Was it because it's a good political aspiration? It's a good media outtake to say that you did, or are you doing it for the real reason? And time will tell. I hope that there's true intentions behind it.
Right. Good stuff. Good stuff. How often do fellow educators come to your school to see what's working, and do they ever follow up with you and adapt and tell you how it's working?
Almost never.
Oh, why do you think that is?
I don't know. Some of it is because we're a charter school. There's always been a beef between public and charter, which is silly. And so a lot of times I even have some colleagues I'm the CEO and I've been running this organization for 10 years at a very high level, but I have some colleagues who are superintendents who I believe look at me as if I'm not doing the job that they're doing because I'm doing it on a smaller scale. Saving lives and making sure that kids are educated, I don't think there is a small scale for that. And I think at times they are caught up in the fact that it is a public versus charter, or we're not going to go and have this conversation with charter. But I wish that people did. I wish my doors are open. We have an open door policy. Even now, during this virtual pandemic, if our schools wanted to come in and see what we were doing and wanted help or support, on the side, I do consult and work with schools. But I will tell you honestly, the way that I've been able to build some of these successes has been from traveling and seeing others, has been seeing what people work and what they don't work. I remember I went to Texas one time. I've been to Chicago, Texas, New York, Tennessee. I've been all over trying to see schools that work and build systems that work based off of like beg, borrow, and stealing, because I want to be humble, and if there's people doing it right, I want to learn from them. I went to a school in Texas, it's the Obama Academy. And there were two leaders there over the time that I was visiting. One was Nakia Douglas, and the other one was Michael Bland. And they had a phenomenal program for young men there. And they were doing things that were innovative, creative. And I said, you know what? I'm going to steal everything that I can from you. And I'm going to learn And but we became friends, and not only friends, but they opened their doors to me. But I had to reach out and ask, and I reached out and I asked, and I still talk to those brothers to this day, because what they had was something valuable. So if I wanted to make sure that I did it right for our kids, I had to look at some of those best practices.
Wow. That's amazing. It's such a dichotomy, what the success that you're having at your institution compared to the majority of institutions out there. It's really concerning. But the 2/3 aspect, you're working with 2/3 the amount of budget, but you're getting much better results. That blows my mind a little bit, to be honest with you.
It's how you allocate and spend your money. And so that's some of the issues that I believe that they have in public schools, which I'm not anti-public school. I went through public school system. I worked in public school system. I respect what public school educators do. We're a public school. We just are a non-traditional public school. We have very high accountability as well. But what it comes down to is often that their budgets aren't being allocated in the right places. The money's not being spent in the right categories, and it's getting spent on things that are appropriate for adults instead of building systems that work for kids. And that's why a lot of schools are having these budgetary issues, because of the way that they're allocating funds, and they're trying to make sure that adults are good, which, quite honestly, you have to have happy adults that are student focused. But spend the money the right way. And so that's one benefit of having an autonomous district, is that we're able to allocate funds the way that we deem necessary to make sure that we're educating our kids.
So, and I back many years ago when I had hair, I spent some time in education, and I was very blessed because the school that I was and for people who want to chuckle, I was actually an educational assistant at a K-6 school. So there's stories there, but that's another time. But one of the things that was amazing, it made me think of education as a triangle. You have your educators, you have the community, and you have the students. And the principal of this school was incredible. One thing, he never yelled at people. Never yelled. And also the staff and him were like unison. They were just a machine. And he was able, and I think the school to prison pipeline, there's aspects from the home, there's aspects of the education system. Let's talk about the home piece. What is needed in a number of Black families' homes to, in your opinion, to stop the pipeline, to turn off that valve?
And I think when you tuck your kid in bed at night, you never tuck your kid in and say, oh, you're going to wake up and be a criminal tomorrow, right? That's not what happens. You tuck your kid in bed and you tell them you love them, and you say your prayers, and then the next day when they're going off to school, it's no matter what your circumstances is, even if you're impoverished, even sometimes parents who are on drugs, you're telling your kid, have a good day, behave in school. And you're giving them those advice, but at the same time, it's our obligation not to just give the advice, but also model the way. So also put not to just walk it, but you got to talk it and walk it. So not to just talk it, but to walk it as well, and to put those things in place. But if you want your child to value it, you have to value it. And so it's kind of aligning some of those values the same way in leadership. So in leadership, I often look at the 5 tenets by Kouzes and Posner, and you think about it in terms of you model the way, you inspire a vision, you challenge the process, you enable others to act, and then you encourage the heart. But it's the same type of thing in your household. It's the same type of thing in your household. If you're the leader of your household, you got to follow that same process if you want your kids to follow it. Now, at the end of the day, kids will get to a point where they have their own choice. and some of them may go astray. Some of them may do things differently. And we have amazing parents that their kids still end up making bad choices. That's human nature. But if they're the right foundations are built, we're going to have more kids making right choices than we do wrong.
That's fabulous. I love what you said there, making the right choices. With the parents, and I think you've talked about some things parents can do. Let's all take about the whole area of the screen time thing. And for another platform that I host conversations for, they had a gentleman come on and talk about, like, you know what, you need to know what your children are looking at. Even more so now, because for many children, the screen time is just amplified now.
Right.
Talk to that point about parents should be investing even more on what their children have on their screen.
Right. And you know, I believe that parents still need to be parents. So for whatever reason, this generation, and with some of our younger parents often feel that they need to be their child's friend. And there needs to be a relationship there. You need to have some type of understanding, and I won't say friendship, but parenting has to come first. And so with that friendship often comes with that child feeling like they're on this equal playing field. And at the end of the day, you are the parent. And so part of being the parent is sometimes making decisions that are unfavorable. And part of that is understanding that unnecessary screen time is unhealthy. So at some point in time, you need to have your child unplug. At some point in time, you probably need to monitor that if little Junior is, if he is playing PlayStation till 4 a.m. and then goes to sleep at 4:30 and then has to get up at 8, that he's going to fall asleep in class the next morning. And as a parent, if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, then you have to make sure and ensure that they pull the plug, take the PlayStation, take the phone, make sure that if the child earns that back. And you know what? It's going to be an unfavorable decision. It might be a little bit of a fight, but it's a fight worth fighting, because at the end of the day, you're going to have a healthier child. Make them get up and do something. Make them do something outside of the screen after school hours if they're virtual. Make them, what happened to playing outside? What happened to doing whatever that get involved in sports, extracurriculars? And yeah, I know it's a pandemic, but even right now, most places have allowed some type of activities to be occurring back in their states.
Also, too, you mentioned in the article about special education. Is it your thought that there are more Black students that need to not be in special education? There's maybe some that are not needing to be there?
Well, it was used as another separation tool. So if you look back into I believe the 60s on, and I think it became big in the 80s, to where when schools became integrated, a way to separate the kids again in the schools, if you look at the research, was to create special education. And so we're going to get all the Black kids and put them in a room together and call them special, and then they need this extra help, or they need this extra support. Now, what I do believe is special education used correctly is valuable. So special education, when a child really needs it, is a great tool. It's when a student is categorized unfairly or just pushed to special education because you don't know what else to do. That's a problem. And so it's even became where you look at the research, where students who are suspended, students who are expelled, are quite often Black males at higher rates, and also special education students. And then even people in special ed have made arguments that, it's because of SPED, but it's bigger than SPED, because if you look at wealthy districts with Black students who are not SPED, they still have higher rates of, or they try to make it a poverty and a SPED issue, they still have higher rates of suspension. So those injustices are happening everywhere, and it is definitely occurring. But special education was definitely formed, one, out of necessity and need for students who need help, but it was used as a tool to segregate blacks again.
In your opinion, how serious is the education system concerned about the school to prison pipeline?
Not enough, because if they were that concerned, if we know that if you're a black man and you fail and don't graduate high school, that the likelihood of you getting a job or career is going to be slim to none. And so if we're still not graduating 40%, 41% of black men, that's damn near half the country. That's half. That means that if we had to choose between you or I right now, one of us would not graduate. That means either you or I would fail, and our lives would probably be different based on the statistics. So if there's something, if the country's really worried about it, I think more time, effort. But people, you think about it, people put their money, where people spend their money is often what they value, right? And you look at, if somebody spends money on something, that means they probably think it's probably important.
Yeah.
And education gets cut all the time.
Well, you're reading my alleged mind here. I was going to ask, how is this going to turn around if educational budgets keep on getting cut? Like, if it wasn't for the pandemic, could you imagine how much the budgets would be cut?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing. Education was cut and put in certain places during the Trump administration that weren't necessarily helpful. They tried to put it into private schools, into private institutions versus and they tried to bill it as that they were for school choice, but it didn't have anything to do with school choice. It was for private school institutions. It didn't have to do with public charter schools, or it didn't have to do with public schools in general, or equitable funding. If something doesn't happen, we're in a load of trouble. But again, it comes down to what do we value? So,
but aren't we in trouble already?
Oh, absolutely. We're in terrible trouble. It's just now people have to do the work to get out of trouble. People have to do the work. And it's about building systems that work. It's about educating young black men and young black minds and making sure that they're not failures. It's about taking personal accountability for that.
Do you feel on the educational side, and it's been a long time since I've been exposed to it, obviously, how are educators measured to see if they are meeting standards, etc.? Because let's look at it. When a young black man is in school, public school or charter school, most of their waking hours is in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say systems, one of the things that's coming up in my mind, maybe I'm crazy here, is there a system in place to evaluate teachers of these young people so that they are giving their best, and then at the end of the day, that variable of the unknown we don't have to worry about, then we can concentrate on the student and the home?
So that's a good question. And what's interesting about that is I have some pretty strong thoughts on that, because quite often what's happening with the traditional public schools are that there are teachers' unions. And I can give you New York State. New York State does a phenomenal job at protecting teachers. When I say that, they protect all teachers, good, bad, and ugly. And so do I think that there's value with certain unions, and there's value with protecting to make sure that employees have fair labor rights and fair labor laws? Yes. But protecting someone, like, you don't protect if there was someone who was a heart surgeon and they had several patients that died because of malpractice, would you continue to allow them to practice heart surgery? Probably not. But yet you will continue to allow a bad teacher to practice surgery on our child's brains. And so that is very problematic because this teacher union protects them. There was huge issues about teachers being monitored through assessments and scores and some other things like that. And so there was huge fights about that here, especially in New York State, to where I know that really wasn't going to fly. It didn't fly because of the political powers and because the money behind the unions. Comparatively, what I can say with, and not all, but I can speak for my specific charter school, and what I can speak for like the SUNY authorized, that State University of New York authorized charter schools, is that there's very, very high accountability measures. So for example, most public schools can fail for 10 years before there's like the review process between they try to help them reform and possibly shut down. And a lot of times they just end up with a new name and the same old bag of tricks, and I know that there's some people in the state that are working to fix that. But with the charter school, what I can honestly say is with the high accountability, for example, 65 is passing for Regents exams with New York State. So if you get a 65 or better, but with the charter school, our accountability says I have to have 65% of my kids get a 75 or better in the English exam and an 80 better in math. And if I don't reach these milestones, Dr. Vibe, what happens is, and if I don't maintain certain graduation rates, they shut me down. So I don't have a choice but to find a way to make it work, because I just went through a renewal. Or actually, tomorrow's the full renewal vote is tomorrow, which they already told us they're voting yes for 5 years, unconditional. But with that renewal process, if I didn't make sure that our school performed, we would be shut down, and we wouldn't be anymore. And there's pluses and minuses with that, because we do a lot of good in the community and we do a lot to change things for kids. But if we're not performing, we're held accountable.
I get concerned, and the charter schools versus public, that's a whole other conversation itself.
Right.
But it almost seems that public education is business. It's a big business. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I don't know if I can justify, but a part of me says it's just churning them out.
Stop playing the stock market with kids' lives. So stop playing the stock market with our kids. And at the end of the day, again, I promise I'm not anti-public. I'm just there needs to be higher accountability. There needs to be where if teachers aren't performing and they're not cutting the mustard, because and I've worked in public schools where I'm not going to say anybody's name, but everyone had a handful of teachers on their roster, as I was an administrator in the public school, that they were teaching for 25, 30 years, and they didn't write a plan. They just came into the classroom and they went off the top of their head. They put something on the board. They gave the kid a couple worksheets, and boom, bada boom, bada bing, the period was over. And that was their teaching and learning, because they could do it. And I'm going to tell you that would never be okay in my school.
Well, see, and the thing that concerns me again, too, is even if money was infused into the process, there's no guarantee that it'd be more efficient.
Right. And that's why
that's what the block is, in my opinion, where I'm looking at here in regards to the education side. There's a whole piece in a number of homes, and that's a whole other conversation. I think what I would love to do is have you come back, and I'd love to get parents who have children in the charter versus parents who have children in the public. And I'd love to have a roundtable. It's just come up in my mind. I would love to have that sort of roundtable and really flush it out, because I'm sure there are challenges with parents who are dealing with the public system that parents who are involved with your system in the charter, they're not facing. But then again, I get back to the point, if we put more money into the system, is it going to be better? Because you're having success with 2/3 the amount of money that many of the public schools get. So where's the gap? And at the end of the day, why are educators there? Are they there just to get a pension? Are they there to positively affect our future?
Right? You got to know your why. You got to know your why, and your why has to stay poignant on your heart and on your mind, even in days of struggle. And so, as leadership, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're doing what's necessary and that we're taking on the fights and that we're not allowing the political pressures to dictate what's best for kids, and that we're making sure that we put in place what needs to be in place so kids can be successful.
Well, we'll start winding it down here. And I'm going to read your last paragraph, or the second last paragraph, or the last real paragraph in your article. You say, quote, "That system, that foundation of seeing Black students as delinquent is a malignant and very real part of the Sprinter B scenario across the United States. There are steps we can all take to address, correct, and alleviate this. But before we discuss what those are, we really all need to get clear about what the starting line looks like." So in your opinion, what should the starting line look like when we talk about the school to prison pipeline?
Well, we have to start with equity. You know, and equity doesn't always mean equal. And if again, equity is more about fair. Equity means that we need to have people who look like us in the schools. We need to have education being a priority. We need to have budgets where money is spent in the right way, not just more money, but money spent in the right way. We need to have schools that are building and putting the right systems in place. We need to have schools where our kids are, especially our Black and brown kids and our Black and brown young men, are a priority, and where we're able to drop the racist institutions. But it doesn't happen unless people who don't look like us start to address their biases and start to address the cultural deficiencies and start to admit that there's issues and problems and something needs to be done about it. And as that begins to happen, because this is still ran by a white majority. And so at the end of the day, until those others decide to come to terms that this institutionalized, this racism thing is real, and that there is a school to prison pipeline, and there is biases, and that there has been traps set all along the way, it's not going to go anywhere. But that's the starting line, is by people dropping their biases.
Dr. Miller, it's again a pleasure to have you share with us. I know you have your book coming out. When is the book scheduled tentatively?
Ooh, so I'm not sure yet, because it's in the process of being edited, and we're selling it trying to get it to some literary agents to go to some larger publication companies. I think I got a good one on my hands. I think I'm looking for my Oprah moment.
Another episode of Vulnerable Voices.
Uh-oh, what's that?
I don't know what that is. That's not on my end.
Number 3, someone believed it.
That's my podcast. So someone just played my podcast. So I also, season 3 of Vulnerable Voices is coming up. So whoever just played that, thank you. That'll be coming up in May. I think May 5th. We'll have Vulnerable Voices, and we'll actually be through YouTube, Facebook. We'll be streaming live right through there. We'll be using StreamYard as the platform as well. And but thanks for whoever gave me that little plug there in the background. So your person's on it, Dr. Vibe.
There you go. And I just hope the producer can just put up all the different places where you can be reached. I know there is the Urban Education. That's the actual link. There's the Facebook page, or the Urban Education. That's the link to the article. There's the website, urbanaeducation.com. Also, I think you put and Instagram at Doc Miller, DocMiller. Also, another website, paulmilleredd.com. So there are all the places where
I'm easy to get hold of.
Yeah, there you go. He's Googleicious. He's Googleicious, as they like to say. Dr. Miller, again, a pleasure. Thank you so much. Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Podcast News Award winner, 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethic Media Association. Also, once a month, I host online conversation, the only one in the world on a monthly basis that is for fathers and dads. That's sponsored by Dove Men Care and Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. Excuse me. Okay, there we go. I'd like to thank Christy White for listening and watching. Jenna Miller, thank you so much. And all the other people who watch us live on the replay, it's appreciated, not taken for granted. Also, thank you for listening on the replay, audio only, which will be available as part of this epic conversation. Also, thanks to BIA Media. I'd just like to close out, as usual, with what I like to say. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. Remember to give yourselves grace. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith, and education, no matter what the race, is important. If you're a parent, make sure you are invested in your child or children's future, because investing in their future is an investment in all of our futures. Good night, everybody. Walk good.